So in this section of proofs, we're going to talk about parallel line proofs. So if you recall, we talked about parallel lines cut by a transversal way back in the beginning of the year. And so now we're going to reincorporate that with proofs. So if you recall, the types of angles we talked about were corresponding, alternate interior, sorry, that should say same side interior, and alternate exterior angles. Okay? Corresponding angles are always going to be congruent. Alternate interior angles are always going to be congruent, and alternate exterior angles are going to be congruent. The ones that are different are those same side interior angles. Those are supplementary. Okay? We are primarily going to focus on proving corresponding angles congruent, alternate interior angles congruent, and alternate exterior angles congruent. We're not really going to focus on same side interior regarding proofs. Okay, we're just going to focus on the congruent angles. So if we take a look at our first proof, we're going to use the corresponding angles postulate to prove that alternate interior angles are congruent. So we're given that A is parallel to M, and we're trying to prove that angle 3 is congruent to angle 6. So whenever you fill out a proof, you always want to fill out sort of the skeleton or bones of your proof. So your very first statement every single time is what you're given, and your reason is given. So we were given that A is parallel to M. Your last statement is what you're trying to prove. Angle 3 is congruent to angle 6. And essentially with these parallel line proofs is you're trying to link these three angles, or these two angles together. And yes, looking at the diagram, we know angle 3 and angle 6 are congruent because they're alternate interior angles. But we have to show why. Okay, so we can't use alternate interior angles as a reason for why they're congruent. We have to link them to other angles to show that they're congruent. Okay, so we're going to pretend like we don't know that they're alternate interior angles and that we don't know alternate interior angles are congruent. So what you're going to do is I always start with my first angle in my proof, angle 3. And say it's congruent to another angle besides 6. Okay? So look at your diagram and find another angle, and there's multiple, that are congruent to 3, besides 6, because that's what we're trying to link it to. And I know that angle 3 is congruent to angle 2. The reason why angle 3 is congruent to angle 2 is because they are vertical angles. And we know vertical angles are congruent to each other. So that's going to be my reason. Vertical angles are congruent, using that vertical angle theorem. So your next step when you fill out these proofs, essentially, is what you're doing is you're bridging the gap. So we linked 3 to angle 2. Now we're going to link angle 2 to angle 6. So whenever is the second angle you name in step 2, you're going to say it's congruent to the second angle in step 4 every single time. Okay? All you have to do is look at your diagram and figure out, well, why is 2 congruent to 6? What type of angles are 2 and 6? And 2 and 6 are corresponding angles. So that's going to be your reason. Corresponding angles are congruent. And your very last statement with these parallel line proofs is the same every single time. Okay? Your reason for parallel line proofs is always the transitive properties. This is exactly what we use to link 3 things together. Link A equals B, so angle 3 is the same as angle 2. B is equal to C. Angle 2 is equal to angle 3, therefore A and C are equal. 2 things, 3 and 6, are congruent to the same thing, therefore they are congruent to each other. Whenever you link 3 things together, you're using the transitive property. And if that's still confusing to you, all you have to do is just remember, oh, I'm doing a parallel line proof, my last reason every single time is transitive property. Okay? So now let's take a look at another one. Okay? Again, we're just trying to link 2 angles together. So fill out your bones. We know our first statement every time is A is parallel to M, because that's what we were given, and our reason is given. Okay. Your last statement in this is what we're trying to prove. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 8. And with these parallel line proofs, and only parallel line proofs, another freebie is that our last reason is going to be transitive property. Every time. So we can go ahead and fill that in. Okay. So then when we fill in the rest of our proof, start with your first angle. I'm going to start with angle 1. Look in my diagram and name another angle that angle 1 is congruent to. And I know that angle 1 is congruent to angle 5. Again, there's more, but that's just the ones that I picked. So I'm going to write that. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 5. And the reason that they're congruent is because they're corresponding angles. So I'm going to write that. Corresponding angles are congruent. Just like we did in the last one, we now bridge the gap. So I said 5, and then we link it to angle 8. Bridge that gap. Angle 5 is congruent to angle 8. And when I look at my diagram, here's angle 5, here's angle 8. The reason why they are congruent is because they're vertical angles. And we know vertical angles are congruent, so that's our reason. And then we're done. It's the same steps every single time. Just linking two angles together. Your last reason every single time is always transitive property. So if you flip it over to the back, this is more like what you're going to see on the OST. You're going to have a word bank. Okay? And when you're given a word bank, you have to use what they gave you. I know on the front you maybe could have filled out the proofs a little bit differently or in a different order, but when you have a partially completed proof with word banks, you have to use what they gave you. Okay, you can't go your own route. That's really important. If you do that for me, you're going to miss a lot of points because you have to use what I gave you. Okay, so little typo, change that to R is parallel to S. It's actually A is parallel to M. Same thing in here. It should be R is parallel to S. Okay, so they partially filled this out for you. They already wrote in your first statement, which is the given, but we know our last statement is what we're trying to prove. So I'm going to fill that in. Used it. Done. We also know every time our last reason is transitive property. Now we just have to fill in the rest. They gave us a reason for number 2. Okay? They said corresponding angles are congruent. So what I like to do is look in my box and see which one of these are corresponding angles. So if we take a look, ask yourself, is 3 a corresponding angle to 3? No, 3 is not a corresponding angle to 3. That's not going to work. So then look, is 1 a corresponding angle to 5? Yeah, 1 is a corresponding angle to 5. So I'm going to check the next one just to be sure they didn't kind of double up. 5 and 7. 5 and 7. 5 and 7 are not corresponding angles. So the only pair of corresponding angles are angle 1 and angle 5. So that's what I have to put for statement 2. If the reason is corresponding angles are congruent, the angles that you put with that statement have to be corresponding angles. Okay? They have to match what the reason is. Number 3 is saying that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Okay? Well, why is angle 1 congruent to angle 3? And if we look in our box, this one's talking about angles being congruent. This one's talking about angles being congruent. Reflects the property, no. That just means something's congruent or equal to itself. So that's not going to help us there. Okay? Well, if I look at my diagram, are 1 and 3 alternate exterior angles, or are they vertical? And they're vertical, so that's going to be my reason for number 3. And we're done. and we fill in the proof using what they gave us. A lot of the times you aren't going to use everything they give you. They put stuff in there to throw you off. So you kind of have to think a little bit which makes the most sense to put in that proof. Okay, we have one more. Take a look at example 4. We have a double parallel line proof, but the concept is exactly the same. You still put your given first, so we were given that RS is parallel to each other and TU are parallel to each other, and that's given. We know our last statement is what we're trying to prove, which, sorry, I think I meant to type that in there for you. So just write it in. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 11. And then we know our last reason every single time is the transitive property. Every time. Your last reason with these parallel line proofs is transitive property. Other proofs that we're going to get into, not necessarily the case. But when you have parallel lines like this, your last reason every time is transitive property. Now we just have to fill in the rest. Okay? They gave you statement number 2. They said angle 1 is congruent to angle 5. So looking at the possible reasons, the statement is talking about angles being congruent. Well, those 2 reasons are talking about angles being congruent. But again, we just talked about reflexive property. That's just saying something's congruent to itself. That's not really going to help us here. And we look at our diagram, angle 1 and angle 5, are they vertical or corresponding? And the correct answer is corresponding. So that's going to be our reason for number 2. Okay. 3, they gave us the reason. They said alternate exterior angles are congruent. Okay. Well, there's another shortcut we can use here, because we said when we do parallel line proofs, we have to link the 2 angles together. So I stated angle 5 in the first one, and then I have to link that to angle 11. And if I look at my box, there is something that says angle 5 is congruent to angle 11. I'm just going to double check to make sure those are alternate exterior angles. So here's angle 5. Here's angle 11. If it helps, cover up angle line R with your hand. I'm just going to scratch it out for you. Just put your hand right there. And if you visually look at it, yes, angle 5 and angle 11 are alternate exterior angles, so I know that's the right one. You can also go through process of elimination. If you look at the diagram, just to double check, 5 and 9, here's angle 5, here's angle 9. Those are not alternate exterior, they're corresponding. 5 is not an alternate exterior angle to itself. And if you look at the diagram, here's angle 1 and here's angle 15. They are alternate exterior angles, but that doesn't link us. That doesn't link the second angle 5 to the last angle 11. That's linking it to 15, and that's not what we want. So 5 is congruent to 11 is the one that makes the most sense to put there. Okay, if you need to watch the video again, if not, you should have some practice to work on.